Good morning. Welcome to Unity of San Marcos. It's wonderful to have you with us this Sunday morning. I am Reverend Sondrda von Gillenband, and I will be speaking today with you about walking in faith. Walking in faith. I just find that to be something that we can all use reminders about, and something that I have to call on from my toolbox occasionally of how do I walk in faith, and where are those tools that help me walk in faith. 2 Corinthians 5:7 says, I will walk by faith even when I cannot see. I walk by faith even when I cannot see. You ever walked into a dark room and kind of had to make your way across the room because the light switch was on the other side? You weren't sure what was in the room. You weren't sure if there were tables, chairs, toys, that sort of thing. So you made your way cautiously, but you knew you had to make your way. That's the way it is in life sometimes. So there's a lot of discord in our world today. There's a lot of people who are angry. There's a lot of apparent separation. People judging other people, judging what things are believed and not believed. Even though we're all one, we're making judgments. We're in despair sometimes. We're depressed sometimes. And I turn off the news a lot because that just sends me down that rabbit hole. All the same, I believe, I have faith. I believe in our country, our nation, our people, each other. I believe that we are good. I believe that God is active in our lives. And so I walk in faith most of the time. And when I don't, I have things I can call on. Now, when I think of walking, I think of little kids when they're just learning to walk and they're pulling up on the table and they're trying to get their balance, trying to learn how to stand there on those 2 feet. And finally, they're able to do that and they start walking along the side of the table or holding onto a leg and walking with somebody. They're making their way, they're progressing. And then after a while, they let go and they're able to stand there and all excited about that. And then comes today that they really reach out, let go, and begin stepping out. They step out in faith. Now, sometimes they fall right off, and they do that a few times, and then eventually they go, all right, let me go for it. And they step out, and they're so excited about their new freedom, they oftentimes end up running with that new freedom. So we walk in faith and have the opportunity to run in joy, in the joy of God. When we develop that faith strongly, when we develop that faith so that even when something comes up, we remember the truth and we use our tools to continue on. So in studying this and thinking about this walking in faith, I noticed that when we're talking about walking in faith, there are 3 descriptive prepositions that accompany our spiritual walk. So I double-checked the definition of preposition because I wasn't sure that I would use it correctly. But a preposition tells us where and when something is in relation to something else. It often tells us where one noun relates to another. So it tells us where one noun relates to another, when one thing relates to another thing. So let's look at that. Walk in the steps of faith, Romans 4:12. Or, even when we also should know this, walk in the newness of life, Romans 6:4. Walk in the newness of life. In Galatians 5:16, it's walk in spirit. We're in the spirit. And walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering. A fragrant offering. I love that. And that's in Ephesians 5:2. Walk in him, Colossians 2:6. In the light, John 1:1. And in truth, 3 John 1-4. So when we're learning to walk, we have to use a lot of props to keep our balance. And we have the ability to use these props, these words of support when we need them. We have the ability to call on these words to remind us to be in truth. And the second preposition is as. And this word is used as an illustration revealing additional truth. So 1 Corinthians 3:3 directs us to walk as mature adults. I love that. Oh my goodness. Walk as mature adults, as followers of Christ who have long passed the elementary stages of just beginning to walk. So we're talking about becoming mature. Ephesians 5:8 directs us to walk as children of the light, mature in our faith. Again, reminding us that we don't get to remain as children forever. We have to develop our faith. Now we're told to come to Jesus as little children, but now we're talking about faith and developing our faith. The third preposition is the word by. 2 Corinthians 5:7 reveals the metaphysics of walking on a spiritual level. We cannot gradually move until God directs us. We can't wait for God to say, come on. We must have faith, even as small as a mustard seed. We must have faith, even if it's as small as a mustard seed. So get up, come on. We can't wait to move. It's ours to do. So our first steps of faith might be uncertain. We might have to trust a new process. But as we begin to understand how God is developing within us, we gain confidence and a skill in walking in harmony with this divine power, this divine spirit. And this process is necessary to grow our faith so that we can do that deeper walking, that deeper knowing. Without developing, we are ineffective in our service, and we are unconscious in our spiritual existence. It's important to become effective in our spirit and in our service, and to be conscious in our spiritual existence. So as we are readying for our walk, as we are learning on it, what are we focused on? One of my favorite metaphysical teachers, Ed Rabel, says that one of the greatest obstacles with which man has to contend with is his unfoldment, is placing the power of his faith in what is commonly called fear. Now, first of all, I'm going to talk about Ed Rabel and Charles Fillmore and some of our early teachers say man. And when we say man, we're talking about humankind. Now, when I'm doing a quote, I'm going to go ahead and say man, but we're talking humankind. So one of the greatest obstacles that we confront in our unfoldment is called fear. Fear. We'll say that again. You see, fear has been built into the human experience, into the human consciousness. And though we have instilled that in our early youthful mind, we have the opportunity to recognize the fear and begin to work with that. He continues to say, too often, man lets his emotion of fear rule his life. We fear lack. We fear disease. We fear old age. We fear death. We fear not having enough. We fear fear. So often we get so entrenched in the belief in fear that we're looking at that rather than at the goodness of what is provided to us by God. So, we begin to hobble because we're all tied down by faith. We can't get our feet going very well. We're hobbled down, weighed down by disbelief or fear of a belief in fear. So what do you want to believe in today? Fear? Or do you want to turn your faith to the goodness of what we were taught by our way shower, Jesus the Christ? To walk in faith, we must trust God, and we must trust ourselves and our willingness to listen and to learn from the Christ. We must really listen and empower ourselves to do God's will. Empower ourselves to do God's will versus our very own will that can oftentimes lead us astray. We must begin and see what is happening in our lives. And when we see that place where we're walking away from God, we need to turn around. When we're focused on fear, we need to turn around, to face God, to look for the good, to celebrate the good. We must allow ourselves to run in the joy of God's will, to be that free youngster who sees the goodness and grace of today's life. So I enjoy scuba diving. Actually, scuba diving is a passion for me. And there's some hard and fast rules about scuba diving if you want to be a safe scuba diver. And I do, and most of us do, because it's not a dangerous sport, but there are dangers involved if you're not aware. Just like there is in life. If we're not aware, we may hit some obstacles that we don't want to hit. But if we're prepared, if we have our toolbox, if we know the truth and turn back, turn around, look again when it's necessary. So one of the things about scuba diving is always to have a buddy. You want to have a buddy that can help you in preparing to get into the water, making sure that your gear is all good. They can be with you in the water, making sure that you're doing things right, and they're there to help you if something should come up. A buddy double checks on you. And as you enter the water, you make sure that you have a neutral buoyancy. That is, you want to be equally weighted so that you don't pop to the top or sink to the bottom. And that's done by some weights and some air and a piece of equipment. So you ensure that you're buoyant. You ensure that you're following the rules. You know that you have a buddy there if you should need them. And I would just like to say that a buddy should be somebody you can trust. Somebody who's on the same page as you, that's going to hold you accountable in a loving way. Not meanly, but in a loving way. So you have your neutral buoyancy, and you're swimming along, and you've gone through a hole or something, and you don't know which way is up. You don't know what way you're going. Well, there's a hard and fast rule for that. You always follow your bubbles. You look at your bubbles and you see, are they going up or are they going down? Because you want to know that your bubbles are going up. That means up, always. It means up to the top of the surface. Not that you're going to quickly surface, but you want to know which way you're going. And that's something that your buddy can also help you with. So these things are important, just like walking in faith. You need to know which way you're going. You need to know that you have a buddy there that will help you if you get off track. You want to know that you're not out there alone. At least I do. It's important for me. So do you have a prayer buddy? Do you have a prayer partner? Do you have a minister? Do you have a Bible that you read? Do you have spiritual literature that you read to keep you prayed up? Do you pray? Do you meditate? Do you make time for that every day? So, back to diving. So when you're diving and you have this buddy who is not a control freak, but somebody who will assist you if you make a mistake, a friend who is gentle and will check in with you to see where you are and make sure that you're where you want to be. somebody you can count on, someone you can count on. And then there's another very important aspect of diving, and it's called a 3-minute safety stop. And you do this at 15 feet as you're coming up. Maybe you've been down to 35 feet, 40 feet. I don't know. Maybe you've been down to 90 feet. I don't know. But you have a 3-minute safety stop. You stop at 15 feet and you just hang out. You just relax. You chill. And that helps get rid of any gases that are not necessary in the body. It's just a safety stop, and it's something that you want to do, just like we want to do in life. We want to stop. We want to pray. We want a meditation practice. If you don't have a meditation practice, begin one, build one, use it. If you have it, use it. Take a safety stop as needed. If you're out there in the world and you're hit with something that's a little bit difficult, stop, breathe. You know, they say we're to count to 10. I don't know, just count to 3. Count. Stop. Remember who you are and what you want to put out there in the world. Do you want to put a lot of negative energy out there? Or do you want to put out love? Do you want to be an example of God's love? Out in the world, we can stop and go to our hearts and breathe as necessary. One of the things they teach in heart math is to do that, but to have an idea in your heart that is of something that you love, like a pet or a baby's smile, or just something that always brings a smile to your face. And I love that. I think it's important. So if we were to live by faith, not by sight, what are we going to do in our lives? If faith is the assurance of things hoped for, not a conviction of things seen, if it's going to convince us that our lives are an expression of the divine, we want to make sure that we are in that state of knowing. We want to make sure that we have physical, mental, and spiritual support. It sets a law into the operation of who we are and how we operate. So we know that our buddies exist and that those tools can help us. We want to know which way we're going. We want to know which way is up and which way is down. We want to know that we can stop and breathe and allow ourselves the opportunity to remember. Now, in the Bible, we're seeing wonderful examples of faith. We have Abraham and Moses and David and Jesus and Paul, and heaven knows we have Noah, who went out and built an ark by the direction of God. So you see, God is divine mind, and God teams with ideas. Faith is an idea in mind. Faith is one of humankind's 12 spiritual powers, one of our mental faculties. Faith is a spiritual eye. Faith is the perceiving power of the mind, linked to the power to shape substance. Charles Fillmore said that in his book on prosperity. See, we do not have to recall with loss, but we have to live with faith. For faith is that standing ground, hopeful, standing our ground when we're in doubt, but believing in the unseen. Anything hoped for can become a definite substance. Anything that we hold can. And when we live in faith, we find that our life is much fuller. You see, faith has no opposite. I love that. Faith has no opposite. We can only have faith or not have faith. We call fear oftentimes the opposite of faith, but it's not. It's just that we failed to put our power in the right place. Have faith in God, says Mark 11:22. Have faith in God. Take a break if you need to, but never give up. Walk knowing that you can deepen your faith. You can deepen your faith with practice. And so I invite you this week to exercise as if you're a scuba diver. Make sure that you have a buddy that you can pray with, that you can call upon in time of need. Make sure that you have spiritual reading material that you can call upon when you need. Make sure that as you walk through life or swim through life, that you have someone that helps you know where you're going. That you have bubbles that you can watch to make sure that you're moving up, because that's what we're all wanting to do, right? Is move up in our understanding and our living and our faith. We'll move up, come above in consciousness. And in doing that, we can rest. We can rest in God. And in that resting, we can find new hope, a greater faith, a greater strength. So it's been a blessing being with you here today. Namaste. And so I would like to take a moment, and if you would like to send an offering to this church, you may do so. There are links that you can click on and make an offering. You can mail it in. There are many ways that you can support this church. And in the meantime, I invite you to join with me in saying that we are abundantly blessed. As we pray, we are abundantly blessed in spirit. We are abundantly blessed in spirit. And we know that there is good. And we choose to live in that place, from that space. And so it is. Amen and amen. Great being with you today. Bye-bye.